Hello Wolfpack, slightly different stuff to talk about here on Bitcoin today, but before we get into the different stuff, let's look into why Bitcoin has been seeing this rally just briefly. Well, it's pretty self-explanatory. The S&P 500 started rallying on March 15th, the day after interest rates were risen by 25 basis points. Bitcoin started rallying on that very same day, and through that we can hence conclude that Bitcoin is simply following the S&P 500. The S&P 500 is simply following a yield curve inversion-led pump, so a pre-recession rally. And so, given that fact, we can assume and we can determine quite confidently that this rally on the S&P 500 will not last, right? We don't know exactly when it will reverse. It might go up to all-time highs, and given the fact that Bitcoin is following the S&P 500, we can assume the Bitcoin rally won't last. And so essentially this whole move is fake. Now, does that mean you shouldn't trade? No, it doesn't. You can still trade. It just means you should be cautious because this move right now is driven by a pre-recession rally, which is inherently not rational price action, which means it won't continue forever. And so, yes, given that example and given that as a fact, I would still say that the 200-week SMA on Bitcoin is the next logical target. And by next, I mean macro. I mean, late this year, November, December this year, 24K, somewhere around that region. A lot of people get very upset when I say things like that. To that, I would encourage you to look into what happens before a recession in relation to the SPX, right? The SPX very well could pump higher and Bitcoin could go all the way up to 53K, 52K, break the 200-day SMA and move upwards. And it still could be macro bearish. That doesn't mean we shouldn't trade it. That doesn't mean we're going to miss out on the opportunity. Of course, we're going to get into the market. Of course, we're going to take some profits there. But the point is, you should be very cautious about flipping macro bullish here because the point is, we don't really know how Bitcoin's going to react to a recession. But without further ado, I mean, we've looked at that information so many times by now, and it's very much common knowledge to a lot of my viewers at this point. I would encourage you to look at some of my previous content if you want to know more about that. Specifically, the last video I did, I looked at that very extensively. But right now, we're looking at Bitcoin from a technical analysis level. And starting out on the smaller time frames, we'll look into the hourly chart right now. Let me just fix up my camera here. We can see on the hourly chart that Bitcoin, if we remove this dashed line, because it's not really relevant, had a symmetrical triangle formation that had formed during this massive upwards rally to the upside. Now, this pattern, this just goes to show how irrational this price action is, right? We said this is an irrational price action happening due to the S&P 500 rally. This was one big ascending wedge formation or an ascending channel formation, right? And it somehow managed to break to the upside even still. That doesn't happen. We don't see a rally in a normal, healthy market from 37K all the way to 48K in a massive pattern of exhaustion with a descending volume. It just doesn't happen like that. So for everyone who thinks that this move is natural, I'd encourage you to take a second look at that. It's not natural, right? This is 100% manipulated price action by the S&P 500. However, we still need to look at the TA. The TA is Bitcoin had a symmetrical triangle formation formed by this upwards trend, and it was edging on a breakout towards the top of the ascending channel formation. And essentially, if Bitcoin manages to break out, this still holds true. If Bitcoin manages to break out above 48.5K, right? Very important, 48.5K, and that's increasing by the day, by the way. Bitcoin will be short-term bullish, and Bitcoin will be targeting 53K. So if we break 48.5K, close above it, that would be an easy swing trade, an easy 10% trade to 53K. Right, so that's a good little setup there for you guys there. However, Bitcoin has managed to reject from that region. It's seen an ascending channel formation in the short term. It's seen the symmetrical triangle formation in the short term, and it's recently managed to break that symmetrical triangle formation to the downside, and now it's holding support just barely at 46K. Now, if we're looking at this from a common sense perspective and looking at it from TA only, we can assume that since we've broken this ascending triangle to the downside, we will be breaking downwards even further and taking a measured move. I mean, this is just basic TA, right? This is my opinion. This is the objective reality here. We need to take a measured move from the breakout point, and we will be targeting, as you can see, exactly 42K from this move. So yeah, I would expect 42K as the next step. That is the most likely step according to the TA. However, we do have a massive chunk of support, and I'm not denying that, and there could be massive amounts of contention in this support zone, this green support block, between 45.8K and 44.5K. Zooming out to the daily chart, we can see that is the area in which that support block is, that is held historically quite massively. It's also the area, if we look at the weekly chart, where the 50-week SMA is and where the bull market support band is. So yeah, the triangle on the hourly chart suggests we go to 42K, but it's really not that simple, right? There's a lot of things in between us and that 42K region that could stop the drop. And so yeah, I would label this an area in which you need to be neutral in the market, not bullish or bearish, but neutral, right? But what I can say And what I can say quite confidently, that if you looked at this area on the chart, right, if you looked at this area on the chart and you inverted this chart and flipped it upside down, you would 100% say this chart is bullish. And so for that reason, I would say this chart looks bearish right now on Bitcoin. Right, and that's something that no bull can deny, right? But what we're looking at here on Bitcoin as well is that overall, well, this is a pattern of exhaustion. I've covered this quite extensively as well. This is a pattern of exhaustion. Ever since this channel started forming, this yellow channel, we have seen descending volume while we grind upwards. That's a pattern of exhaustion. It represents buyers becoming less and less likely to buy and less willing to buy as the price goes higher and higher. Looking at the weekly chart, the last weekly candle, it didn't look too bad. However, what we have to look at is the fact that it was a doji candle, right? It was a small body and it had pretty much equal wicks to the upside and the downside, which is generally a reversal pattern in an upwards trend. We saw an upwards trend, we saw a doji, that is a reversal pattern. And if this candle closes wet on the weekly chart, if this candle closes red below the 50-week SMA at 45.6K, that would be an evening star formation, which would trigger a drop downwards to the range lows at around 33K, right? That's very important to note as well. So again, if this weekly candle closes red below 45.6K, that would be an evening star candlestick formation, which would most likely send us to the 33K lows, or at least to a 42K retest, right? But that's just what I'm looking at right there. And a lot of people would say, just addressing the weekly chart right now, that this weekly candle has triggered a bullish MACD cross on the weekly chart. I mean, you aren't wrong, right? You're not wrong. I can't tell you you're wrong because you simply just are not wrong. But we will also note that obviously, as you would know, and most people know this by now, the 2018 bear market price action is very similar to the price action we're seeing right now. In 2018, we came in for a bullish MACD cross. We actually initially saw the bullish MACD cross, but it flattened out for 6 months before we dropped downwards, right? It's way too early to tell as to whether this will be a successful cross. It could just flatten out. And in that case, it will flatten out and then we will see a crash just like in 2018, right? There's no real way to tell at this point. It's too early to label that an actual bullish MACD cross. And so, yeah, I would say it's too early for any of that kind of labeling. But I suppose the entire point of this video, right, adding new information to the mix, the entire point of this video was to look at the symmetrical triangle formation. We have technically broken that to the downside. And so if you are in any trades in the short term, and if you are trading in the short term, I would be very cautious here because this is technically a downside break in a pretty large structure that's been forming since the 29th of March, right? This is a downside break just below resistance, wedge between support. If we lose 44.5K, that would send us plummeting to 42K on Bitcoin. And from that region, we might have one last chance to make a swing upwards. But what's most likely, if I'm honest, if we go down to 42K, what's most likely is probably something like this, okay? So it's worth keeping an eye on Bitcoin. We've technically had a bearish break to the downside of a shorter term. It's not fully confirmed yet. 44.5K is the major region where the bull market support band and where the 50-week SMA is. And if we want to see a break to the upside, we're looking at 48.5K. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. Lots to look into in the next few days here as we have had that short-term break. We could be breaking downwards out of this range. It seems like the most likely scenario, but again, it relies a lot on what the S&P 500 does. If the S&P 500 keeps pumping, there's really no telling what could happen. We could just blast upwards, It's one of those times in the market where you need to be neutral to a certain extent, right? Looking at this chart, I would say that's undeniably bearish. Looking at this chart, I would say that's undeniably short-term bullish and long-term bearish, right? We're in the short term right now. We're in the short term, right? This is very much shorter-term bullish here for Bitcoin, for the S&P 500. The point is we don't know when it will stop. So we don't really know too much about the charts right now. Really hard to explain. But the point is we don't really know too much about what's going to happen next in terms of the S&P 500. And so predicting a Bitcoin move is very, very hard. What we can do is look at Bitcoin and say, well, this is bearish. Well, this is bearish. Well, this is neutral, right? Mostly bearish. But at this point, too early to say. Let's wait for 44.5K and let's wait for 48.5K. Those are the two critical regions on Bitcoin. But please go ahead and go to your daily chart, your hourly chart, on TradingView, drawing that symmetrical triangle formation. Understand that we have broken to the downside technically, and until we break back into that triangle formation, we are in a renewed breakdown on Bitcoin. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you in the next one. Now, before I go, actually, I will just say my Telegram group, WOC exclusive, is open now. 2 days from now, 48 hours, it's going to be open. We're releasing the trading results for this month in 24 hours. We've pulled about 300% profit this month, and the market's gone up in total. Total cryptocurrency market cap has gone up about 30%. So we have about 10x to the performance of the market, right? So everyone who says I don't altcoin trade, well, I've been altcoin trading the whole time, right? 300% profit in about a month. We've got about 30 members in there right now. The group's opening up. We've got 70 or 75 plus people willing to join. If you want to join that group, go and join the information group in the description below. If you just want to check it out as well, go and join that information group and you'll have all the information there posted in about 48 hours, a little bit over 48 hours, about how to join and the results for this month. So you can see how we did this month as well. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video for the third time, and I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.